Andre Marcus, the Environment and Energy Advisor for the Overseas Countries and Territories, and I will be your moderator and host this evening. So over the next hour, we will showcase initiative for policy innovations. Our speakers will update on roadmaps, on energy transition, on blue economy, on climate change happening in their regions and territories. And finally, they will share with us examples of projects that are happening on the ground and that have an impact and then can be replicated in other regions across the EU. So, with me here tonight are Minister Kallistrat Lund, representative of OCTA's Vice Chairman and Greenlandic Minister for Agriculture, Self-Sufficiency, Energy and Environment. With me also is Minister Juan Pedro Ilanes, Vice President of the Balearic Government and Regional Minister for Environmental Transition. Mr. Vincent Chauvet, Rapporteur at the COP26 for the European Committee of the Regions, and Mayor of Autun, France. And joining us online is Vice Minister Ama Barredo, Vice Minister for Environmental Sustainability for the Basque Government. Right, so to start the panel discussion, I will invite Mr. Lund to begin. Before he begins, Mr. Lund is, as I said, the Vice Chairman of OCTA and Greenlandic Minister. Prior to this role, he has been mayor in Greenland and a member of the Greenlandic Parliament. He has held a political office for a long time and has had many roles in committees relevant to climate change, and is also a member of the Northeast Atlantic Council. So, Minister, you are here as a representative of both the Overseas Countries and Territories Association and as the Minister of Greenland. What are your territories and the OCTs in general doing to adapt to climate change, and what can you share with us on this? If you would like, yes, you can take the podium.
Nice to meet you. How do you read me? It's okay. Thank you. Good afternoon. I'm glad to be here in person to speak to you about the work being done by OCTA and by Greenland. As representative of the Vice Chair of OCTA, thank you to the Chair representative, and I'm sorry he could not be here in person. The 13 OCTs work together on many important topics, not least of which is the adaptation to climate change. Adaptation is indeed a major issue, as OCTs are most affected by climate change. 2 years ago, in late 2019, the ministers of the OCTs signed the Oceans Declaration, highlighting common marine priorities amongst OCTs, encouraging blue economies and calling for united action for the preservation of oceans and marine wildlife. The declaration also includes measures to identify, monitor and reduce pollution and to mitigate climate change effects. Moreover, the declaration aims to develop and strengthen regional, European and inter-OCT collaboration. Starting in December 2020, the framework of the Oceans Declaration was materialized in the Blue Economy Roadmap. This ambitious policy paper was passed on extensive research, stakeholder implication and focus of 4 blue economy subsectors: food security, blue energy, blue tourism, and maritime development. Past this work, a step-by-step approach through recommendations has been created and integrated. In parallel, OCTA has been active in many other village areas. It has published periodical reports on the participation of the OTCs in EU programs, on the progress of OTCs on the transition to sustainable energy, as well as numerous webinars and meetings related to adaptations. This year alone, OCTA has organized over 20 webinars just in the period January to July, aimed at sharing information and experience between the OCTs themselves and between the OCTs and the EU. In the same vein, the US Week was organized earlier this autumn, whereby 13 US representatives from OCTs were invited to Brussels and Strasbourg to see and experience Europe. As a key milestone for EU-OCTs relations, on 15 October, the European Council approved a new overseas association decision to further strengthen the long-term relationship and cooperation between the European Union and OCTs. This decision aims to promote the economic and social development of the OCTs and to establish close economic relations between OCTA and the European Union as a whole. In this context, Greenland holds the vice chairmanship of OCTA and is an active member of the organization. Even though Greenland, with its 56,000 inhabitants, only has a small discharge of CO2, our new government has initiated a number of actions pointing to counter climate change. With these initiatives, we want to send a strong signal to the rest of the world that Greenland is highly committed to counter climate change. First and foremost, our government has started the process of becoming a full signatory party of the Paris Agreement. Our former government had decided open territorial reservation. This summer, Greenland announced and immediately halt to all new oil and gas exploration licenses. I have just tabled a new legislation for building 2 major hydropower plants. In a few years from now, 90% of the electricity produced in Greenland will be from sustainable sources. And we will continue to develop sustainable energy sources until we are no longer dependent on fossil fuels for our public heat and electricity production. Greenland still have huge untapped hydropower resources which exceed our domestic demand multiple times. We are right now in the process of opening up for investors who can develop these areas. Our ambition is to become a net exporter of renewable energy within 1 or 2 decades. One of the major CO2 discharges in Greenland is our ships. Therefore, my comments will engage with the international key stakeholders to accelerate the process towards zero carbon shipping. A first step will be to host an international zero emission shipping conference in Greenland in 2022. We have just adopted Greenland's first 10-year strategy on biodiversity, which sets the framework for sustainable management of biodiversity and natural resources. Finally, I will point to the rich mineral resources in Greenland. The global green transition is depending on so-called green minerals or rare earth minerals, which are to be found in large quantities in Greenland. Thank you, and may this COP26 platform help us counter climate change. We wish, as we always. Thank you.
Yes. Thank you, Minister. Thank you, Minister. It's great to hear of the important work being done by OCTA and by Greenland in particular. And I know OCTA is open to working with partners in fighting against climate change and for climate change adaptation. And it was great to hear from you. Thank you. Our next speaker now is Minister Juan Pedro Ilanes, Vice President of the Balearic Government and the Regional Minister for Energy Transition. Now, Mr. Ilanes has served as judge since 1989 to 2015, if I'm correct, and then has been a member of the Spanish Parliament, and is now Vice President of the Balearic Government, dealing with energy transition, climate change, and adaptation policies. Now, among his main objectives is the pioneering climate change and energy transition law. Now, Minister, if I understand correctly, 2 years ago, the Balearic Parliament passed a law that on energy transition and climate change, and this in a context where we know the Balearic Islands are very fragile to climate change. Now, this legislation has been quoted by some as very ambitious and something that could be replicated across regions in the EU. Could you tell us more about this project in particular and in what your region is doing in general?
Of course.
Thank you.
It will be a
pleasure. Will you step over here?
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, good afternoon to everyone, and I apologize, my English is a little rusty, so I prefer to do my presentation in Spanish. I hope you will enjoy it. I am going to talk about Balearic Islands. We are a little archipelago. Somos un pequeño archipiélago.
We are a little archipelago in the Mediterranean, in the Western Mediterranean, and therefore we have got very important specialities that I would like to highlight and to clarify here. First of all, talking about the special vulnerability that an island territory has got as the Balearic Islands. And after that, I'm going to talk, as the moderator has already introduced, about the Balearic Law of Energetic Transition, essentially talking about the governance framework it offers to us. And thirdly, I'm going to talk about some of the projects that we are already developing in the territory of the Balearic Islands. Our geography, our condition of being an island, we are 4 small islands in the Mediterranean, in the Western Mediterranean, so what all the experts have defined as the zero area of climate change, this binds us to be especially strict regarding this fight against climate change. We are exposed to bigger effects and harder effects than other areas of Europe because we are in the zero area of the Mediterranean Sea, and the last scientific researches available are warning us about the danger of being in this most vulnerable area. What's more, in the Balearic Islands in these last years, we have been able to check this phenomena, acceleration in this increase of temperature, bigger periods, longer periods of droughts, more dangerous storms, and other adverse meteorological phenomena. And these circumstances have got an impact not only on the environment, something very important, but also has got social and economic consequences that are very important too. And hence, we boast that we have got a pioneer law in the whole Spanish state approved 2 years ago in a unanimous way in the Parliament of the Balearic Islands, which is the Climate Change and Energy Transitions Law, whose aim is to react to these Paris agreements, giving also the island perspective and also other European initiatives such as Create Energy for the islands, a law that also gives us a governance framework where all the involved administrations are intervening. In the Balearic Islands, we have got 3 administrations, one that has got competencies all over the territory, 4 insular ones in each of the islands, and then the local administrations within the islands. The law of climate change and energetic transition has essentially 2 objectives, the mitigation and the adaptation to the climate change. Regarding the first objective, the law is very clear. It is defined by the need of the reduction of emissions and also the increase of using of renewable energies and also the increase of the energetic efficiency. There are some tools in order to implement cross-cutting adaptation policies in almost every socioeconomic sector of our archipelago, such as the energy, tourism, territory, health, and so on. And the law endows the Balearic Islands of a governance mechanism which is very important to involve all the actors of the civil society in this adaptation. For instance, we have got an experts committee in order to assess the government. And in this committee, all the civil society of the Balearic Islands are represented. We have got a very important cooperation from the university. We have got also an interdepartmental commission because these policies are have got in the Balearic Islands, and all of them are getting involved in this energetic transition and adaptation to the climate change. We also have got a Climate Balearic Council, which is the forum for all the society, all the stakeholders to get engaged in this adaptation. And last, and I want to highlight that we have got a very efficient tool given to us by this climate change and energetic transition law, which is the Balearic Institute of the Energy, which is performing the role of public producer of energy, and also they want to become the commercial tool and also executive agency to foster the different policies of every administration for the energetic transition. Regarding the strategic framework for the adaptation, the main instrument of planning we count on is the energy transition law and climate change, and nowadays we are developing it from the government of the Balearic Islands. A law, a plan that is including a strategic plan of adaptation as a main point, foreseeing the impact, the climate scenarios and the vulnerabilities of the different sectors of our ecosystem. This plan is something essential to make these action lines emerge in order to increase something very important for us, the resilience in this climate change, and to fix indicators that could measure its implementation. Between the elements of adaptation included in the law, we have got the inclusion of the climate perspective in the policies through a cross-cutting transversal approach. In this way, budgets and law sectorial policies must ask for information to the Department of Climate Change, and this department must assess that all the instruments they have created are inclusions and resilience. And we are also going to offer subventions for the local administrations, for the municipalities, with the goal that they can also implement these measurements to get adapted to the climate change. Thanks to this initiative, many projects at the municipal level have been done with customized solutions for each of these territories, and the aim is to foresee the risks of climate change through improvements of green areas in the field of the municipality, and to improve the sewage systems to make them more sustainable. I'm going to make reference right now to two essential projects that we have got in the Balearic Islands, and I think they are really important. The first one is the Coast for Change project. This is a specific project that has been performed in cooperation with the University of the Balearic Islands, and it is the first example of research made about the vulnerability of our coast regarding this increase of the sea level. It has been made by different experts, and this has allowed us to draw different scenarios to prepare our coast regarding this increase of the sea level, and also to clarify which are the adaptations measures. Not all the islands have got the same risks, and some risks are more subject to this danger. The smallest one, Ibiza and Formentera, and there is a specific research for each island because we think this is very important. And then we have got a project where we want to involve the Spanish state, a pilot one, which is the one of the beach of Cala Millor. Cala Millor is a summer resort, is a summer place on the east coast of Mallorca, and is one of the first initiatives that we have got to adapt our beach area to the climate change. The touristic resorts, so all the stakeholders have started to present suggestions in order to maintain their economic activity in the future, and the beach is the main economic engine of the area of Cala Millor. So it is so important to regenerate the beach, and the consortium of local stakeholders involving all the economic agents, the touristic sector of Cala Millor and the local administration means one of the first experiences of adaptation in a beach located in an essentially touristic area as Cala Millor Beach. We understand from the government that with the agreement and the social participation we have to start to debate and contribute with solutions, which is our essential objective. It is to act right now in order to protect the Balearic Islands in an effective way. Climate change is already here. An archipelago like the Balearic, located in the Western Mediterranean, will suffer from very hard effects. So to mitigate these effects it is something really important for us, and that's why we are advancing, looking for this objective. But it is not only enough to mitigate, but adaptation is also fundamental, because no matter how much we accelerate this energetic transition, these effects of the climate change are already here. So our first goal from the government of the Balearic Islands is to prepare our territory so that the next generations can go on living there and can develop their lives there. We have the duty from the regional governments and the government of the nation to leave a planet that can be inhabited for the next generations. The next generations are leading this process of efficient fight against the climate change. They must be able to enjoy this paradise of the Balearic Islands as we have done. And one of the essential priorities is the development of this law of energetic transition and climate change in order to mitigate and get adapted to the climate change. And we are there in this task right now. So thank you so much for your attention. I am totally available for your questions.
Thank you. Indeed, it's heartening to see the ambitious roadmap adopted and the projects on the ground. And yes, to continue, we have the European Committee of the Regions to take us to a more regional focus. Mr. Vincent Chauvet. Mr. Chauvet is the rapporteur on COP26 for the European Committee of the Regions and also the mayor of Athun in France. Now, Mr. Chauvet, the Committee of the Regions represents a wide range of territories across the EU. How do you make sure that all their particularities are heard and taken into account? If you would like to...
Yeah.
Yep.
I will let this. Thank you. I'm going to speak in French on behalf of President Tzitzikostas, who is the President of the Committee of the Regions. Chers amis, le comité...
Dear friends, the European Committee of the Regions would like to thank and congratulate your association, OCTA, the Basque government, the Balearic government, Balearic Island government, and the Portuguese government for this meeting. I, for one, would like to welcome and thank the colleagues who have just spoken about their territories. They have shown that our territories whoever they are, wherever they are territories of innovation, especially when it comes to climate change, adaptation and mitigation. As Commissioner Timmermans said, we should not be afraid of talking about adaptation, because we might think we were a bit slow and therefore we have to adapt to climate change. We have to see this as a fact and make sure that adaptation is materialized in the best conditions. As you know, it's a matter of urgency. The climate emergency and biodiversity loss are the greatest threats facing the territories of the European Union, and the Committee of the Regions represents the different governments, subnational governments, i.e. local and regional governments, regions and cities. And I, for one, am the mayor of a small city in Burgundy. We local and regional governments, we local and regional powers are indeed responsible for 70% of climate mitigation measures, and we are in charge of 90% of climate adaptation policies. At least 1 million local and regional leaders in Europe are therefore engaged around these issues. And I would like to take this opportunity to try and explain how we hope to be working in the best possible fashion, how we hope to cooperate with other levels of power. Because what we need really is to make sure that the local levels have the means to fight against climate change. We will need financial means, financial resources, and of course the COR promotes direct funding for local and regional powers in Europe and elsewhere. We will also need technical support, not just financial, but also technical support, upskilling. I come from a rural community in France, and sometimes we see that it's not easy to attract experts, human resources. That's the human capital. That's what makes us rich, really. And it's sometimes difficult to attract these people to deal with complex issues. We will also need to deal with infrastructures, and we will certainly need to effectively manage and monitor climate actions. Electors, the citizens, whom we see every day, will want their elected leaders to act responsibly, and they will support them and take ownership of the big changes needed if they have trust in their elected leaders. As an elected representative, as a Frenchman and as a European, I've never been as proud of being European as today, when we see what is put into place, what is organized, when we discuss, when we talk with other nations. We can be proud. I think the European Union is leading the talk, leading the discussion, and I hope that at the end of this week we will have positive results, a positive upshot for this conference, COP26. The European Committee of the Regions is acting in full support of the deployment of the European climate diplomacy. We are stronger when we work together, when all the territories together work hand in hand, and we are proud to be able to showcase good examples, best practices, especially the examples of our local territories and overseas territories that are part and parcel of the European Union. At the COP, we've brought the attention of the COP to set a series of 300 best practices from our members, a variety of projects that bear witness to our diversity and to the different approaches that we develop facing the same challenges, especially, for example, when it comes to forestry. I've been able to talk about this with a number of people here. Forests are hit hard by climate change, and we will need mitigation, but also adaptation measures. As far as the blue economy is concerned, the Committee of the Regions is working through its political forum, the Euro-Mediterranean Regional and Local Assembly. It's called ARLEM. with local and regional representatives from the EU and its Mediterranean partners. RLM is committed to promoting a complete change of direction, a new course, and of course, the blue economy will be a key component of that. Environmental protection, protecting the land also, sustainable development. We will be next year in one of those Mediterranean countries where the next COP will be held. We need to increase awareness, to be fully aware of the environmental problems and the opportunities. It should involve active citizenship and promote a change of behavior and priorities and co-create innovative pathways. That's why it is important to recognize the crucial role of every region, city and village in delivering climate action. This is why we want multi-level governance to be fully recognized. Local powers are not there just to carry out national policies or continental policies, European policies. They're not just there to implement things. They need to be involved in devising the different actions, climate actions, because sometimes these actions go beyond national boundaries. This is why we think it is important to celebrate and thank the Balearic Islands and the Basque Country in Spain, because they have exemplary pilot projects. As far as France is concerned, we see and recognize New Caledonia in a totally different region, making incredible efforts in terms of climate adaptation. That is the richness of Europe. This is the leading role that we are honored to take, and this is how we intend to be efficacious, to save money, to create jobs, to protect health, and to reduce energy dependency. To conclude, I would say that we are here at COP26 with an official delegation of members of the European Committee of the Regions to convey a very simple message. The world is off track when it comes to averting climate emergency. We should really talk about adaptation. The subnational governments' climate commitments must be taken on board formally in the nationally determined contributions. So they could be the addition of local and regional commitments. This is what I recently said at the European Committee of the Regions, and we adopted a resolution on that matter unanimously. It was adopted by all the political groups. We call upon the United Nations, the EU, and all national governments to make sure that the regional and local dimension is included in the COP26 conclusions. We can no longer afford to ignore the fundamental role of these local and regional territories in delivering climate action, or we will fail for our people and for our planet. Time is running out. We can and we must change course together. Thank you.
Mr. Chauvet. It's always such regional approaches that help us see EU policy happening in practice and actions at grassroots level that are needed to reach the policy objectives we are seeking to achieve. So thank you. And our next speaker this afternoon is joining us online, thanks to this hybrid system that we have for events. Mrs. Amaya Barredo, Vice Minister for Environmental Sustainability. Hello. Her mission is to place the environment at the center of all policies that her government is creating, and she's promoting important legislative instruments such as the Energy Transition and Climate Change Act or the Natural Heritage Act. Now, all these initiatives are leading to a transition to a more sustainable model for the whole territory. Vice Minister, from what I understand, the Basque Country has a long-standing trajectory in climate action, and the focus now is on climate change and energy transition. Now, in this context, the Basque Country has come up with a strong solution-oriented approach, and with the Urban Klima 2050 project, which aims to be the largest climate action project in the region, to be a hub to mainstream adaptation policies into sectoral policies, and to develop replicable solutions that can be repeated in other territories across the EU. Is this correct? And if so, can you tell us how your government has achieved this?
Sí. Thank you and good afternoon. Well, I go to speak in Spanish. Bueno, decía que
Okay, I wanted to say that it's for me a pleasure and a honor to be able to participate in this summit of the climate change in Glasgow. A summit we have all of us a lot of hopes on, and with this interesting panel and the colleagues I am sharing somehow this day the panel too. My idea was somehow, as I was anticipating, as the moderator was anticipating, to be able to explain to you in a very short time our trajectory in the Basque Country in the last 20 years regarding climate change. First of all, to introduce the region to you so that you can know exactly where we are, what we are, and in this sense, just to tell you that the Basque Country is located at the southeast of the Gulf of Biscay, in the Spanish state, in the south of Europe. This is a region that is surrounded by the Cantabric Sea, and on the other side it is limited by the Pyrenees, with a big variety of ecosystems, but especially a very small region, because we are just talking about more or less 7,200 square kilometers, but with a very high level of population density. We are very industrialized, and we have got more than 2 millions of inhabitants, and with many mid-sized and small-sized urban areas, and a big percentage lives close to the coast. Even though this is a small region and with these features, there is a very big variety of ecosystems, because there are two biogeographical areas and a transition one, and this gives it a lot of habitats, and in this sense this region has made a very big effort trying to protect the territory somehow in order to preserve the natural heritage, and nowadays we have got 23% of the surface within this within the framework of the European directive. We have been working in the last 20 years in transforming somehow this territory in order to reduce its emissions, and above all to start to separate this economic growth from these emissions of greenhouse gases, of what we are calling the decoupling, through levers such as industrial efficiency, digitalization, but especially going to an economy which is much more sustainable, circular, and above all fair. Nobody must be left behind. In this sense, the Basque Country has been doing researches. Every year we make our inventory of emissions of greenhouse gases. There are already researches about the vulnerability of the territory, and somehow we have identified the main risks against climate change, and there are many risks in our region because we have got a big diversity with many variations in the biogeographical issues, and we have got rainfalls and floods because of the rainfalls, with accumulations of extreme rainfalls, where we are affected by floods, especially when the rivers are overflowing, and the increase of the sea level for the year 2100 would be between half a meter and 8 meters, and droughts in the Mediterranean area with the reduction of the rainfall is going to represent a 15% for the year 2010, she said. With this increase of the temperature, all of us suffer from, and we are talking about 2 degrees. In this sense, the Basque Country has been working from the year 2015 in a strategy of climate, defining the horizon for the year 2050 and anticipating to the Paris Agreement. This is a strategy for a long term, including measures and objectives and actions addressing mitigation and adaptation, but especially a strategy that had a very important basis at the level of sub-creation, where different levels of governance participated, different stakeholders from every sector, and a strategy that somehow was very participatory. And a strategy couldn't be otherwise that was fostering the 2 objectives, both mitigation and adaptation to the climate change, and also new objectives were supported on it, developed with some actions. This strategy for the long term, for the year 2050, is implemented every 5 years with action plans. The first one was the one between the period 2015-2020, already over, where 70 priorities were defined to be implemented during this period, and where there was an evaluation every 2 years of the progress of the plan. Right now we have got the second action plan from the 21 to the 24 that is going to go on with the climate actions of the Basque Country, but also combined with the energy too, which is the new aspect of this planning, and especially with the goal of facilitating this achievement of the climate neutrality in the Basque Country. We already declared a climate emergency in the year 2019, approved and passed by the regional government, and the Basque Country has been working from 2019 in this way. Apart from this global plan with the goal of approaching these actions in the next 5 years, what we are also aiming is at involving different sectors in the development of different actions at an industrial level, food industry, rural development, coast development, infrastructure of sustainable development, urban generation that somehow can enable the creation of jobs and sustainable development. In this sense, we are working with the government of the Balearic Islands on a law of energetic transition, which is going to be born in the first 6 months of next year. In this sense, we have focused, since we started to work on this discipline, on the local action. We have understood that without the support of the local governments, it's going to be very difficult to face all these changes, and apart from this we have to elaborate norms, and in the Basque Country there are programs available for the town halls and several tools available for the town halls that can enable them to align with all the objectives of the region. There are tools of cooperation and work, but also financing, funding instruments, and we have got 3 lines of funding addressed to town halls. The first one is addressed to the investment, to infrastructures, equipments, adaptation of the public spaces, reforestation, substitution of car fleet. So we support the local administration to make this transition. There is another line that has recently been opened. These are the youngest lines, where somehow we realized that we had to innovate with the town halls also in the social part, and then we started with a program of research and development for projects that were focused on the adaptation of the climate change, and where instruments are promoted for making decisions at the municipal level. For instance, these climate scenarios of each municipality. Each municipality must know which its scenario is, and they can adapt their working plans to them, and also to improve the structure of these critical aspects. And then a third program where we are investing on pilot projects. So these ideas that a town hall can have can be translated in a reality, and solutions that can be reproduced in other municipalities. And once they have been tested, we can also fund them, finance them with the first line of subsidies. And really what we want is really to support all these entities in the development of actions for mitigation and adaptation to the climate change, always aligned with the plans of the Basque government that have been approved in our region, and all of them aligned for the compliance of all the objectives. We have invested more than 59 million since we approved this strategy in the year 2015, and this strategy is integrating new subsidies and funding strategies. Right now we are working through a network. The Basque government is working through a municipal network called Udalsarea in Basque language, and there are more than 85 town halls, and we have got about 151, and we have advanced very much regarding the inventories of emission, the footprint in each municipality, and also we have been working on getting integrated to this town halls agreement, and together with all of them we have defined this cooperative agreement. This is the Urban Climate 2015. It is a cooperative and transformative project. It is the biggest project of local action in the last years because it is compiling a total of 40 actions that can be reproduced in other areas, in other regions, and somehow with a period of execution of 6 years, we have got a budget of 20 million euros, and 51% of this funding comes from the European Union with the participation of 20 partners entities, with the Basque government, with the provincial councils, and also the biggest town halls of our region. And apart from the technological centers and research centers, and this project above all wants to achieve the fulfillment of the commitments that have been adopted in the action plans, and we have to define the emissions we want to reduce, how to increase absorptions, how to integrate climate change in this local action, acting at this level in pilot projects with 3 levels of interventions in coast, in river basins, and in urban areas, and above all, empowering the local administration so that they can improve their capacity, also fostering the citizen actions, and this allows us to transfer this climate awareness and to transmit it to the citizens within the framework of eco-governance. All the administrations are important, all of us play a role, and all of us have to work together somehow to make these steps and to make the transition. And in this sense, just to tell you that there are projects especially addressed and specific, for instance, for urban and peri-urban areas. We have got 7 projects at the moment developing a green infrastructure within the framework of this territory. And what we've done is, for instance, to adapt coastal areas to this degradation of the climate change and the effects in order to foster the public use and eco-agricultural activities, and for instance in the town hall of Vitoria, when they have not only created this green ring, but also a farming ring around this, fostering also parks for ecological agriculture, where citizens are actively participating through their own orchards. So we are raising awareness about this kind of practices and consumption to the society, recovering spaces that have been contaminated or polluted in the peripheral areas, and somehow applying criteria of urban planning to create these farming ecological sectors in the municipality in San Sebastian. In another capital, reservoirs have been recovered that were quite degraded. We are recovering biodiversity of natural spaces of the area, and at the level we have to finish. So can you finish now, please? Okay, I'm finishing now, just saying that there are projects addressed to basins and addressed within the framework of these urban codes. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you very much. And I understand we have a video as well, a short one. Thank you very much, Vice Minister. Let us hope that this project is an inspiration for other regions across Europe. Thank you for joining us. And we are running out of time, but we do have a few moments for a last short question. And if I could just go back to the very beginning to Minister Lund. You mentioned in your speech that Greenland is now joining as a full signatory party to the Paris Agreement. Can you tell us more about what you mean and what the process involves?
At first, I will say that we think it's a right decision. The Greenland government is a green government, so all the decision will be not right. So, because in Greenland, in the big island, a big country, it's in Arctic. We need this place. Also, we have responsible also. The global change have no borders. So. We can see by our eyes how quick the changes is in our country. So we think it's necessary to join to the to all cooperation for all countries. In Arctic, the heart one of the important hearts in world. The rate is very high today. It's so if we don't do anything, we can see the next. In my lifetime, I can see the ice cap retracting and thinner, melting from the top and melting from the bottom. So we have to do anything, something. Therefore, we are now joining starting to join the Paris Agreement. And to answer your questions, I will read a little bit from here. Even though Greenland has limited CO2 emission, we want to do our parts. As I mentioned in an interview earlier this week, we want to be known for our commitment to renewable resources and live up to our international name, Greenland. 2 weeks ago, our government decided that Greenland should join the Paris Agreement. Now we will begin the process of ratification of the Paris Agreement in Greenland. This means respecting the final parliamentary ratification process in our parliaments. Of course, the final adoption needs to be passed on a broad consultation. It must involve our parliaments, municipalities, businesses, as well as our fishers and hunters and farmers. All who play an important role is our economy, and civil society must take part in this decision. So.
Thank you very much, and I think this is all we have time for today. It's been really a gallop of information, and I hope it has been enriching for you to listen to all these examples and projects and everything that has been shared here. Big thank you to the organizers of the European Union side events and to the interpreters, and have a great evening and an amazing COP. Thank you.